your chance to get involved in community radio Lake of the Ozarks with 89.3 The Key. 907, thank you for joining us here. Hour number 2, the hour that everyone has been waiting for, and we're waiting a little bit ourselves. Dave Maupin joining us in studio. JR should be here.
I hope he didn't get pulled over on the way over there.
The area is right there. Let's shut that door, please. Can you shut that door for me? Or Jack could come in. I don't have any place for him to sit. You can. There you go. Make sure, Jack, would you do me a favor and push on that door and make sure it's closed all the way?
Oh, there's a wild dog out there.
There's a wild dog out there, and there's kind of a subdued dog in here. All right. Well, we wanted to take this hour, and we wanted to talk about what is going on with Jonathan Hartenstein, JR. Everybody knows him, and the anticipation has been building.
Yeah, so what were you up to this weekend? Anything?
Yeah.
Oh, just doing my stretch.
Doing your stretch.
Is that a euphemism for something? Is that prison?
So, and good morning to everybody. Yes, there is a way, Brian, to call in on the phone, but I think we're going to give JR a majority of the hour to tell his story because he's apparently got a lot to talk about. So you go to...
so many questions.
Huh?
I got a lot of questions.
And I do as well.
That suits me. I could sit here and chronologue. It'd take all day. So yeah. I would rather just field questions, to be candid.
Well, first and foremost, you went to Mexico on a vacation, on a trip, and you've been on this trip before, and I don't think you've ever experienced any issues in the past. I was just sitting here telling Dave, I said, last time we went, we got stopped 4 times and nothing on us. But let us start first and foremost with what happened. Why don't you get everybody up to speed, because there have been a lot of things flying around.
So October is where we start. October. Go to Oktoberfest with my good friend the commish.
Okay.
Who is he's a big deal in a very modest county, and therefore in charge of his own personal security, shall we say.
Okay.
And I get a text message the next morning saying, "Hey, I left a 380 mag in your card. Grab it, and next time I see you, I'll take it from you." So I throw it in my briefcase where I keep my notebook computer. And I end up having dinner with him at Baxter's and a client in December, and I leave the table. And I got to get your mag, so I go out to the car and I'm rifling through it, and I should have dumped it over and shaken it and wiggled it and everything, but it wasn't in there. It wasn't in the main compartment where I had placed it. Mm-hmm. It had gotten up underneath like another compartment. I didn't even realize this bag was capable of having a concealed area. And so I come back inside and I tell them both, it's obviously on my dining room table, or it's in another car, or it's on the bar. Right. I'll get it to you. It'll turn up. It always turns up. Well, it turned up it did.
Yeah, apparently they were able to find that secret compartment
at the most inopportune time for you.
So, we left on the 14th, and the 13th I took everything that was business related out of my bag and was putting everything that was travel related in that bag. I need my notebook on my computer, as well as the transformer and the mouse. I need to get the passports in there, the currency, and just all these travel things. Right. And so go through St. Louis, and not a problem. Spend a week in beautiful Cancun, not a problem. As soon as I get in the room, I empty it out. And that's the way that bag sits, on the floor for a week. Saturday, we're flying back, so I put all my stuff back in it, and we check in. We drop off the bags and go on through security, and next thing I know, my bag is on the screen, and I was sitting there staring at it, and I'm like, what are they looking at? Mm-hmm. What are they looking at? And I'm motioning to my watch to the guy. It's like, I have a flight to catch. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, you have bullets. And I'm like, I definitely don't have bullets. Bring that bag over here and let's see what it is you think I have. And he goes, no, it's bullets. And then it hit me. And I went like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
So they find the bullets in what is obviously your immediate response is you can't believe that they're in there. And so then what happens at that point? What do they do?
You said, that's my wife's bag.
No, let's yeah, okay.
So, we were waiting a long time for the National Guard to show up. And they finally pulled the bag onto a table, the National Guard standing there. And so he starts going through the bag and pulls it out. I said, there it is. Now, all this time, I've always been under the impression that it was just full of Full Metal Jacket because I looked at it and I was razzing. I was razzing the commish. I was like, what kind of girly man goes around with practice rounds? Where's the hollow points, buddy? And so I had been razzing about that. And that was my impression, that it was all Full Metal Jacket. And they started popping these things out, and that ninth one was a hollow point, and that's when things really changed.
So there's a distinction in Mexico for that?
Oh, indubitably, sir. Yes. Only the military can have that. Now I'm a felon. I'm an instant felon. And what's the thing about the tenet of the law in Mexico? It doesn't matter that I didn't know it was there, or that it wasn't mine, it wasn't intentional. None of that matters. That's not a tenet of the statute. I'm in possession, end of story. So,
well, it's interesting too, because you figure Mexico is actually a pretty dangerous country, and yet they seem to have ridiculously strict gun laws.
Well, you see, the effect and the cause. You just got that backwards. So
you obviously are detained.
Yeah, they take me into a side room, and the National Guardsmen just kept coming. And it was really starting to get really, really scary. Everybody from KRMS has already, gone through. They're overweighting in the terminal. And I'm alone. Vicky and Jack are there. And we're all just freaking out.
Yeah, right.
It's scary. And they keep taking the bullets out. And they're all got their cameras out. They're all taking pictures of it. And pretty much, I'm like, so, take it, confiscate it. I'm going to miss my flight. Well, missing my flight was the least of my concerns.
Sure.
They said, we're going to arrest you, and we're going to take you to the federal jail.
So they put you in handcuffs?
They never did put me in handcuffs.
That's cool.
That was cool.
That's very nice.
Frontier pulled the bags off the plane.
All the bags, yours and your son's and your wife's?
Mm-hmm. I will tell you, my saving grace, what saved my life probably was, do you remember Paisley had been in here talking about Thomas Paine?
Mm-hmm.
I had Thomas Paine Common Sense with me. Mm-hmm. And I threw it in that bag, not really thinking I'd ever need it or look at it. But I spent 3 nights in solitary consignment, and if it hadn't been for that book, I'd have gone out of my mind. Sure. I believe. Now, I wanted to talk to you about that, so I wanted you here. I don't know that it was solitary confinement. There was 4 cells side by side at the jail. They were 6 feet wide, 12 feet deep, and they had concrete bunks in it. What used to be a shower with no way to turn the water on, a toilet with no way to turn the water on, a sink with no water, period. I don't know if what you would call that a shock cell, maybe.
I would think it's psychological. They
totally.
They want you automatically to understand where you're at, and you're not within the friendly confines of the United States anymore. And now you're playing by our rules.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably concerned, since you're American, they don't want anything necessary to happen to you until they get their pound of flesh from you.
Well, there had been a lady raped in that very cell not that many weeks prior.
Right.
So I don't know about those sensitivities. But I only mention that cell because it has to do with me having the mind to grab that book.
Right.
That book. They weren't going to let me have it at first, but I just kept grabbing it.
And this is at the airport?
This is at the airport, and they take us back down the escalator. And now, by this point, we have 12. I would say probably 12 National Guards.
And they're all armed?
And Frontier is talking to Vicky. They're all armed.
Did they allow you any opportunity to talk with her at all?
Oh, yeah. They were right there with me.
Yeah.
When we left the security, we went into a room where Vicky and Jack were not allowed, but I could see their silhouettes outside the glass. Mm-hmm. And I was in there for a very long time. And I was on camera. I'd have swallowed the bullets practically if I wasn't on camera. Right. I wanted that evidence to go with.
They'll get them out of you one way or the other.
Yeah, of course. So when they told her that I was basically being arrested and removed, I mean, I can't even imagine what's going through Vicky's mind.
Sure.
And so
that was your first concern, to calm her down.
It really is. It really is. You think that everybody's worried about you, but you're worried about what your family's going through. So they take us down. I'm being marched through the airport, and everybody's like obviously this dude's running drugs. He's got caught smuggling drugs.
Yeah, everyone thinks it's a really serious thing.
You can tell by my tan and my clothes that I'm I'm obviously a drug runner. I presume that's what everybody's thinking, but we go outside and there's 4 cars, and Vicky's just in hysterics. She can't believe they're separating us. Mm-hmm. And there's 4 cars. We run out of there with 4 cars. I think Dodge Chargers.
Lights and siren or what?
Yeah. And you ever seen like in a movie where there's a bunch of cars running and then all of a sudden they just all split in different directions? Mm-hmm. That happened. And it was intense. It was really a trip. It's not a big car. There's a guy to my right. There's a guy to my left. There's a guy in the driver's seat.
So they're sitting in the back with you.
There's 5 of us in there, and I'm in the middle in the back. And, my arms are pinched together like this because there's no room back.
Now, are they pretty cool with you? So they're not giving you a hard time?
They don't know any English, but they're all cool. There was really only one National Guardsman who really reminded me. He stepped straight out of the Gestapo. Mm-hmm. He wouldn't let me have my book. He wouldn't let me have my phone. He was really probably the worst of all of the people I would encounter over the next 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Well, except for the guy with the knife, but that's jumping way ahead.
Okay.
Time is.
So you're on your way to jail at this point because you did not spend a whole lot of time in jail, weren't you? Moved on to the prison.
So they take you to a federal jail. Mm-hmm. And downstairs is the actual jail facility, and they automatically put me in across from the jail with a doctor who speaks English, and he seems to. I get a good vibe. I feel like it's somebody that I can trust, and he actually let me use my phone, which he said quietly.
Well, they're probably concerned about your heart rate and your overall well-being at that point. They don't want to lose you.
I think he was, and the questions were, excuse me, are you in medicine? Are you got any diseases? Do we need to know these things now?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wasn't in there long before I was sent upstairs, which is basically the upper floor was where the prosecutor's office was. And it was a lady, and she came in, and she had 2 assistants. They were guys, and they both started pressuring me like crazy to get Vicky to bring the bag in. Well, we had left the Ryu and Playa car at 1 o'clock, maybe 2 o'clock or something for 6 o'clock flight. So we had been on the road for 2 hours, and then at the airport for at least 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours. And then she had just went back, by taxi, I guess, for another probably 90 minutes, 2-hour drive. So she's up for 6 hours, just exhausted. And I'm not going to ask her to now come downtown Cancun. And I said, no English, no Espanol. And I just played like I didn't know what they were talking about. And they kept saying, she has to bring the bag. Familia, bring the bag. And I'm just like.
And when she's talking about bringing the bag that originally had the ammunition in it?
My briefcase that I keep my notebook in, they didn't have that piece of evidence.
So they forgot to bring it along with them?
They did not bring it from the airport. This was all new to all these guys. This had been the biggest crime to go down in the history of Mexico in the last 100 years. I can assure you. At least it felt like that. Yeah. They didn't really know how to deal with it.
And did they have the ammunition with them?
Yeah.
Okay. Question is, were they looking for a firearm too?
I don't recall any of no, they never. You know what? They brought my bag into that room that maybe was 8 by 8 off the side of the conveyor belts, and they didn't rifle through my bag at all. They didn't at all. Not in the least. They found that they call it a Charger. And I don't know if you knew that, Dave. I presume you did. You're an LA cop, right?
Charger.
They call it a Charger. We call them magazines. Well, actually,
I've heard
a lot of our population calls them clips, and it drives me nuts. It's a magazine.
Right.
And then down there, they called it a Charger. They just kept calling it a Charger. It took me a little bit to realize what they were talking about. The Charger. Oh, the Charger. I could see why they might call it a Charger. It recharges your gun.
Yeah, I guess.
So, finally... my guardian angel walks in, unbeknownst to me. He speaks English. His name is Miguel Rosales. And anytime an American citizen is arrested and brought there, there's notification to our consulate, and the consulate notifies an attorney. And he's only been doing it for 4 years. And he hands me a list of all of the approved attorneys. And they were all 27 years, 33 years. And I thought, well, this guy's been doing it 4 years. And he seems to be on my side. I don't know who to trust. And I'm asking him questions, that I think would help me. I mean, in this situation, you don't know who to trust.
Right.
And that's the number one thing is this guy going to set me up in here for 7 years?
Yeah, I mean, because you don't want to just disappear.
But I liked him, and I asked him to call Vicky. Vicky's a way better judge of character than me. Mm-hmm. I asked him to call Sam Trapp, have a discussion with Sam Trapp. He spoke English. And basically after talking to, and I did hear from the consulate, they called me, and I talked to the lady at the consulate and explained the situation. And she told me that I was in good hands. And it turned out I really was. So, I engaged him, and I said, so, what am I looking at here? And he said, you're probably looking at 2 or 3 weeks in county detention. And I for sure had 48 hours to spend in that federal jail. Now, I wish you'd tell me what it's called. To me, it was shock. To me, it was solitary confinement. Mm-hmm. It was the worst part of my entire. My second worst part of my...
Well, it's probably just a temporary holding.
It is. It's
kind of like the military. They bring you in there to break you down and let you understand and realize the seriousness of the situation. Because I've watched a lot of these programs where they have to catch a smuggler and they take them off to certain parts of the airport. And it kind of depends on how you are, which is going to, in turn, develop whatever type of response you're going to get from them. So if you're easygoing and you're pretty cooperative,
I believe that.
Then they're not going to give you a hard time.
I believe that.
But if you're going to be obstinate and you're going to be difficult, well, then they have ways of breaking you of that pretty quick.
I absolutely believe that's the case. And of course, my nature is to try to get along with people.
Right. And they want you to comply.
And I was going to be compliant. I wasn't belligerent at all.
The end result of most of these things with the Mexican legal system, it's actually not similar to our system where we have like witness testimony, and you'll see in trials, people will like testify in trials. Mm-hmm. In Mexican legal system, it's almost all written. So everyone writes statements, and a judge will actually decide a case just by reading all the statements and then make a decision.
Maybe that kind of helps take the emotion out of it.
Yeah, they don't really, there's no like live testimony or being able to confront witnesses the way you do in America. It's more just everyone makes statements and the judge eventually reads it all. And really what they're trying to do at the end of this is they want money.
Of course, that's exactly
it's all geared towards getting as much cash out of you as possible, which is why they want you healthy and hale, and they want to make sure you have access to your checking accounts.
Well, and I found out that the very first time I went to Mexico, we went in. Tina did not have her passport, so she brought her birth certificate. She was missing a corner of where it's notarized there on the corner. The guy said, you can do this several ways. She can sit here and wait for you. We can go downtown and we can, run a check and look for all this. And it's probably going to take 5, 6, 7 hours. And, or you can just give me $50 and I'll let you cruise right through. So we're not even in the country 5 minutes. I hand him $50 and he takes it, puts it under the counter, and bang, zoom, we're in Mexico, no problem.
And I'm going to point out one thing in this whole story that's pretty interesting, I think, is that you actually got through TSA with the ammunition in your bag, and U.S. TSA did not even notice it.
Exactly right.
And then it's the Mexican TSA, whatever their version is, finds it. And this is not unusual. I've heard about this happening to people with ammunition before, where they actually, or even a gun, where they'll make it into Mexico not realizing they have a gun in their bag, and then they get caught trying to come back into the U.S.
Right. That's exactly what happened to me.
Yeah.
I wonder how it would have played out if, let's say, you stumbled across it while you were cleaning out your bag when you got into the room.
That would have been heavenly. It would be
maybe you would have disposed of it in a receptacle somewhere, and somebody would have found it.
It would have been in the ocean. I can assure you.
But certainly,
don't think I haven't thought this through, Kevin.
This was a
I got a lot of time to think.
Yeah.
Okay, so did they offer you some kind of deal at some point? Like, here's what we're gonna. Here's your options.
Well, this isn't the first time that Miguel had, been through this. In fact, a lady had just come through there like 5 days earlier from Atlanta, Georgia, and her husband and her bought a home in Tulum, and her attorney advised her to get armed. So she comes through with a suitcase with a 45 and 3 mags. And so Miguel had just dealt with that. He said, I got
terrible legal advice you received.
It really was. He says, you're in Tulum. That's a dangerous area.
Maybe he knew somebody that needed to make some money.
That's right. It's a setup.
Well, Dave hit the nail on the head. The entire moral of the story is it's all about money.
Yeah.
And it's a vile, evil, corrupt nation. And I would boycott anybody that listens to this story and wants to spend $1 and send to Mexico. Take me off your friend list.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was telling KB, I lived in California for 20 some odd years, and I refused to go to Mexico. But even though it was right there, you could just drive across the border because it is just completely unsafe. You cannot rely on any of their institutions as far as criminal justice or anything like that. It's all completely unreliable, corrupt. It's basically geared to take advantage of people.
Totally, 1,000,000%.
So you get maybe a little comfort in knowing that you've got somebody on your side, Miguel, who's with the consulate. And did he give you any helpful or useful information at that point as to things that you needed to keep in mind?
He tells me how it's going to go. He's an independent attorney, but he's on the consulate list of approved attorneys. And he is right under God, Jesus. He's right there ahead of Donald Trump in my book at this point, having been through the experience. Now, I didn't know who to trust, but I did engage him. I said, what's this going to cost? And he said, it's going to be between $11,000 and $12,000. And my jaw hit the floor, and I was thinking it's going to be a $5,000 thing. Yeah. And I was like, oh my. And I probably used an expletive. It's like, what if you don't have it? And he's like, then you best find it.
Yeah.
And as I look back, he said, here's the thing, you got 3 things to pay for here. You got the fee, you got the plea, and you got me. And that's where the $12,000's going. I think more than 10 of it probably went to him. I don't remember the fee being that much. I don't really know. Yeah. But ultimately I would be sentenced to 3.8 years. And basically got it down to, I served 8 days. Well, 9. It was supposed to be 8, but everything takes longer. In this federal jail, I come in at 7:30 at night. I'm supposed to be out by 7:30. 48 hours later, didn't happen. I was in there expecting them to come and get me, and I waited and waited and waited through the night. Never did sleep. I was in there 3 nights. I was supposed to be in there 2 nights. I was in there 3 nights. And the first one night, there was 3 men in cell 1. There was 3 women in cell 2, and me by myself in cell 3, and nobody in cell 4. And, if you use the bathroom, it's like an echo chamber. And I had just spent 8 days and 7 glorious nights of all you can eat. So I had my own micro hells that I was going through that we don't really need to talk about.
We'll forego the break here at the bottom of the hour so you can continue your conversation. And let me ask you, would you like to take a phone call at the moment?
Absolutely.
All right. And I am going to preface this by saying, all callers, please keep your questions to a minimum. Please do not go on a diatribe because a lot of people are interested in the story, and that's what we're going to focus on. Caller, we'll start with you. Short, sweet, and to the point, please.
Okay, one of the songs written about being thrown in jail in Mexico, and I wonder which ones passed.
Okay, that's a good question.
Thank you.
I know the question. So the question, Jack, was what songs were going through my mind?
Your personal soundtrack.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
Soundtrack of your life.
Probably the number one song, Kevin, you worked at KEYK. Do you remember a song by The Fools called Life Sucks, Then You Die?
Yes, sir.
There's a third verse where he says, now I'm sitting in jail singing this song. One guy wants to cut me with his knife. One guy wants me to be his wife.
That's right.
I wish somebody would stab me before something really goes wrong.
Yeah.
That was the first song that went through my head.
The first one that would come to mind was... Wall of Voodoo, Mexican radio, because I thought maybe you'd be hearing a lot of that while you were down there.
I eventually would. This place, all I heard was outside traffic.
Yeah.
Like, how was the food?
In here, it was terrible. What they brought me was... Okay, so... Let me back up, and I'll include that in this part of the story. So
that wasn't in the brochure, was it?
It's a really good question. It's relevant. It's relevant. Here, it was terrible. After I'm in there and wake up the next day around noon, let's say, I hear the door open, and here he comes with what looks like a loaf of bread, and he puts it into cell 1. And then he goes back out into his office and comes back again and puts what looks to appear to be a loaf of bread into cell 2. And then I think, okay, he's going to go out and bring me something. Well, he goes out, and then the door closes. And I'm like, I'm thinking in my mind, okay, I haven't been here 24 hours yet, so I'm not being fed yet. And then...
More psychological.
By some strange occurrence across the other side of this corridor that connects us all four. Let's say we're when I come out of the jailer's office, there's a common area that is of course it's all concrete. It's maybe 25 feet long, 8 feet wide, but on the right hand side is the cage, and then there's 4 cells 6 feet wide. So I'm in the third one, and opposite wall I see like a two-way mirror, and I can see into the cell too, the 3 women, and I see that she's putting together 2 sandwiches for me to pass through. So I jump up off the concrete bed, and I go over there and receive them, and I'm like, bless you, bless you, bless you. So they're individually wrapped in a paper towel, and it's a sandwich with a slice of American single, mayonnaise, and some kind of meat. It's not ham, it's not bologna, it's somewhere in between, I guess. I don't know what it is.
Processed?
But, yeah, it's some processed food, and so I'm very glad to have it. And at that point, all I had was a bottle of water they threw in with me.
So you're starving pretty much at this. Are you hungry? Or
I'm not hungry, but I know that I should eat.
Right.
I'm not hungry, I'm not thirsty, but I know that I need to eat. And so I'm slowly eating the sandwich to see if I'm going to keep it down, and eventually I speed up and I'm eating the sandwich, and I get to the second one, and I'm not hungry, but it's got mayonnaise on it, so I'm not going to store it.
Right.
So I go ahead and eat that. So then probably when I'm in there 24 hours, he brings out this, like a TV dinner. It's not a big one. It's got 2 compartments. On the left side is this, some sort of a almost black paste, which I guess is like a bean.
Like a refried bean kind of.
Yeah. But it's like a paste.
Okay.
And then on the right-hand side is like a beef stew, and it's not really good meat, but the potatoes and the onions and the zucchini that's in it is really good. So I kind of eat those, and I reluctantly eat the meat.
Yeah, you need protein.
Yeah, and then I tried to eat the beans. And remember I said there was a shower in there, what had one time been a shower? Well, there's a 3-inch open sewer there. So I go ahead and I'm trying to figure out ways to clog it because it doesn't smell good. So those are the first things I dump into that open sewer. So that answers the question on the food.
Okay.
Now, Vicky shows up and she brings me a banana, and she brings me an apple and a pear. And she tried to bring in a lot of other things. They kept most of it out. The biggest drink is what I got. They wouldn't let her bring all the drinks. I drink that Lipton tea like it's going out of style. It's what I live off of. The green tea. So she tries to bring that, and they're like, no, you can't bring all this, pick one. So she picks the largest one, which was an orange Gatorade. So I took a sip on it and didn't drink anything else or eat anything else that night. I woke up. I should tell you that I guess after I had been there 24 hours, I had slept once. When I got in there on this concrete bunk bed, the bottom one had a piece of foam on it, and it looked disgusting. I wasn't going to go anywhere near it. My attorney had given me that list of approved attorneys. When I finally did realize I couldn't sleep on concrete because it was going to suck the heat out of me, and I reluctantly went to that bottom bunk and laid down. I put that sheet of paper as my pillow because it just to separate my hair from it, because it just seems so disgusting to me. It's amazing what you can get used to in this situation. It's really amazing. I didn't think I would ever go near it. As soon as I went in there, I jumped on the top bunk and got into my book. There's only 3 things you do. If I hadn't had the book, it would have been pray and sleep. And as it were, I would read, sleep, pray, read, sleep, pray. Read, sleep, pray. That was it. And if it wasn't for the book, I'd have gone out of my mind. So I'm praying a lot. Probably prayed more in the last 2 weeks than the previous 55 years combined.
And had you ever had this type of experience before? Like even in the U.S. or something where you maybe were thrown into a jail for a day or a couple hours? Or...
No, David, I have lived a very, very sheltered life. Extremely sheltered life.
My question is how long was your family there with you? How long were they there before they went back to the United States?
We just came back yesterday morning.
The whole family?
Just last night.
They stayed there with you the entire time?
I didn't want them to go, and I didn't think that they could concentrate. What's the sense in going back to work knowing that I'm here? Mm-hmm. I couldn't imagine them going back to work. They would have had no choice if I would have gotten like years, but we were talking weeks.
Well, I think a large part of this is because your situation piqued my curiosity, and so I did a little searching on the interweb, and I found a story about a gentleman who went down there and then took some time to look back on his experience. And it's almost like when they take high school kids into a prison, the whole point of it is scared straight. They want you to understand and realize who's in control the entire time and what can happen to you in a facility like that. And they want certain things to go through your mind as far as, am I ever going to get out of here? If I do, where am I going to end up? How long will I be here? They want you to feel as though you're at their mercy, and you basically are. And in reading his story, the entire time he had no idea, but his faith is what kind of got him through it.
Absolutely.
I would understand that that's more than likely something that you relied on heavily while you were in that situation.
So I'm a Christian going in, and I've always prayed, went to a Lutheran school, and I'm an usher at my church. So it's not that I am a heathen. Well, I'm a heathen in some ways, I suppose, by some measures. But I am a Christian going in. I know that God's not going to put me in a situation that I can't handle. I know that. So I'm not really freaking out so much. But I will tell you that 3 days of being alone, after 24 hours, everybody else left. They were gone. And I was in there for the next 2 nights by myself. And that really messes with you. I would rather have had them back in there and listen to the toilet sounds than be in there alone. It made a huge difference. Absolutely huge difference.
Well, as you mentioned God in what you're talking about, the journey is always the worst part because you never know with all the twists and turns. It's once you get to the end of that journey and what you've learned, and certainly, being back in the United States was the ultimate goal anyway, but all of the not knowing. So when they moved you at some point from the jail you were in to a prison?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, penitentiary, 3,000 people.
Yeah.
Well, there's just, my mind's just going crazy with all things. I want to get back to the God thing for a second.
Sure.
I got in that top bunk and I said, God, this has your fingerprints all over it. I know I'm here for a reason. I know that this is not a happenstance. Too many things had to happen for me to be here right now. That the commish left that mag in my car, that was the first thing. That I lost track of it, that's the second thing. I mean, these are really unusual circumstances. That I lost track of that magazine. Everything happens for a reason, I believe. I always have felt that way.
No coincidences.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've always felt that everything always happens for a reason. And so I knew that God had placed me there intentionally. And I had a lot of theories as to why. I really did. So, automatically into the prayers. The please forgive me's, the thank you, yous, the please, pleases, and please hear my prayer. All these things just, in rotation, just constantly. Until there was nothing more to say. So I'm back in the book until I can't keep my eyes open anymore. That's the cycle. So I go in. This is on a Saturday night. I'm there Saturday night. I'm there Sunday night. I'm supposed to be taken out of there Monday night, but I'm not. And again, they're pouring concrete outside. I hear them adding water. The sound of pouring concrete, and the trucks back it up. Beep. Beep, beep. I literally don't sleep that whole entire night. I'm waiting for them to come and get me the whole time. And of course, I have no idea what time it is. None whatsoever. I don't have a clue. I just know it's dark.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm forsaken. The jailer had the television on for 2 days. Well, guess what? There was no sound out there. He wasn't there. I was alone. I mean, alone. The jailer wasn't even outside the door. If I had rattled the cage, there was nobody to hear me.
Right.
It was an intense feeling. And that's when I almost lost it. I said, God, you got me getting back to my family tonight.
Yeah.
Well, like KB said, though, I think this is all geared to like let you know that you can't do these 3 years, so you better think long and hard about that $12,000 offer.
Exactly. Yes.
They don't want you to get cavalier and say, "Well, I could do a couple of years. I don't want to pay you guys." They want to make sure that you're in the mood to pay by the time you get out.
That's why they make it. And trust me, there was somebody watching you at all times, even though there wasn't somebody actually out there.
Yeah, there was cameras on me. That's true.
And they were watching to see how you were and when and if you might break. If and when and if, whatever. But
I spent a lot of that night just pacing 12 feet, back and forth. And probably the first night I was in there, probably 24 hours in, I'm like, God, I know you're here. Please show yourself. Mm-hmm. And then I jumped up on that top bunk to read the book, and then boom, there it was, across. There was a concrete column. And it had they don't use sonotube. They do their own forming. And so there was a seam maybe 10 feet high, and that formed the left and right. And then they were pouring the ceiling. Concrete ran down, and there was a light out in the main area, and it put a glare right on the cross. It was the biggest. I was like, oh, thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you for showing yourself to me. And then suddenly I started seeing crosses everywhere in this cell. I saw crosses that were scratched into the paint I hadn't seen before. So 12.
Sobering yet calming effect?
Yeah, I really was at peace for the most part. But that night when I didn't get any sleep and I was supposed to have been removed and I couldn't sleep, I paced that 12 feet. I pasted and pasted and pasted and just went on for 1,000 times. I probably said, Holy Spirit, please soften the heart of this judge. And, all these things like that. Please hear my prayer. And just over and over and over again, I'm sure that God probably turned off the speaker. He's like, okay, I got it. Point taken. Because it was just relentless. I didn't know what else to do.
Mm-hmm. So then you at some point you get transferred to the prison.
Okay, so Tuesday morning finally comes, and they come and get me, and I grab my shoelaces. Vicky was able to bring in a night mask that I put over my eyes when I sleep, because she likes to get on her phone at 3 o'clock, and it's like a searchlight in the bed. You can't sleep. So I have one of these anyway. She sneaks it in, and it's heaven sent. So I have that. By this time, Jack has brought me McDonald's and more fruit and some chips, and I've got quite a stash of stuff, so I'm carrying it out of there. And again, it's the National Guard that whisks me to the courthouse.
Cuffed at this point?
They did cuff me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is the first time I wore cuffs. And so, I'm wearing these shoes, white sneakers, not these exact shoes, but identical. And they pull the lashes out the minute I go into that cell, because I could see why people might hang themselves. Sure. And take my belt and all this. So I'm getting these things back to go to court. And these guys that drive these cars, they just love running their sirens. I'm just going to a courthouse, but they act like they're in hot pursuit of something. They got the sirens on, and they pull up to intersections, and they're wedging between cars, and and if a car doesn't move, they finally grab the microphone and tell them to move. Mm-hmm. So they really seem to enjoy that a lot. It's kind of fun, actually, the way they take advantage of their privileges. So we get there, and they put me in a holding cell off of the courtroom. And I have nothing to do. I don't have the book. They grabbed all of my stuff. I didn't get to bring anything up. I wanted that book in that holding cell with me so bad. It's a 6x6. And so I'm relashing, putting the laces back in my shoe, taking them back out, putting it back in, taking it out, putting it back in. You got to have something to do. Otherwise, you just could sit there and think, and you'll drive yourself insane. I believe, from my experience. So I go in there to the courtroom, and my attorney's there, and Vicky and Jack are there, and we make eye contact. We're trying not to lose it. And he says, I sit down next to my attorney, and he says, just be respectful and be attentive, and don't answer without looking at me first. So they read my charges, and it went on and on and on. And there's a translator via video who, every time somebody says something, they pause. It's repeated back to me in English. So this takes a very long time.
Sure,
it takes a very long time. And I had told Miguel, I said, I really want to talk. I want to have a chance to speak. And I told him what I want to say, and he goes, don't say anything. And so the second time I saw him, because he'd come to my cell, I said, okay, what if I just said this? And he said, I think that might not hurt you. So I did get the opportunity to speak to the judge. And when the judge looked at me, I looked him in the eye until the interpreter started talking. Then I looked at the interpreter, but that's the only time I didn't look at him when he was looking at me. And he was always looking right at me. And Miguel said, we have three judges you could get. 2 of them are going to be strict. 1 of them are going to be lenient, and you're not going to get the lenient one. The good news is you're going to get the strict judge who is fair. So I said, I've been bringing my wife here for, Mexico every January for over 20 years, and we've never had any problem. And I just wanted to bring my family on vacation. Just wanted to be in the sun and, be with my family on vacation. It was unintentional what happened, and I beg your forgiveness. And I think it was the exact right thing to say, because I was expecting 3 weeks in this penitentiary. I was prepared for 30. That's a whole other topic. But he came back and said 8 days.
So just a quick question I'd have. You might not be able to answer this, but is the deal that you were offered a similar deal that would have been offered to any Mexican national, or is this kind of a deal that they're tailoring for you basically as a foreigner who has the resources? Can a Mexican citizen also pay to not go to prison?
I believe so. I believe that they have those opportunities. I think it costs people that they presume to have money a lot more.
Sure, it's scaled based on how much.
Well, that's what we discussed initially, is the money aspect of it. So I would say,
I just wasn't sure if it was a deal for foreigners. Yeah, if it was a deal for everyone.
So once they get you in there, the attorney's been paid, the court's been paid, and then they get you in there and you pay the extortion money.
Yeah.
Then there's really no reason to keep you around anymore. Now they just have to feed you.
Yeah, really, in the end, they don't want you in the prison because they got to take care of you the whole time, and they would rather have you just pay and leave.
And believe me, I would have stroked a check in the airport if I could have got on that flight for $20,000 and been done with it right there, because that's ultimately what it cost me.
But they have to go through the charade of pretending it's a legal system.
Well said.
So you get into the prison aspect of things. We got about 10 minutes left, and I'd like to hear that. As far as 8 days, you have a tendency to encounter people and talk with people and interact with people. What was that like?
I love the nation of Mexico as far as the people, and the landscape. They're beautiful people. I've always said that if we were going to be invaded, we could do a lot worse than Mexico, which we are. It's just the law, as it says in Oliver Twist, the law is an ass. So it's a corrupt legal system. It's a corrupt system like that. The people, for the most part, I love them. The people I was in cells with in the penitentiary, and I was in a lot of cells. I hopped around a lot. I thought I'd be in one cell. I wound up being in 3 different cells. After the courtroom, I went to another holding cell. And there was other people in court that day, and next thing I knew, they pulled me out, head against the wall, hands behind your back. Into the handcuffs I went, and went down to the paddy wagon. And there was about 7 of us in the paddy wagon, and next thing I know, we were at the penitentiary. And, everything in Mexico is not as nice as it is here. Everything is always different. Everything's homemade there. All of the locks to get in the doors were always like, you could see where they made it with a cutting torch, and sprayed it black. Whereas in the United States, it's going to be stamped stainless steel and it's going to be molded and perfect.
Everything looks like it needs a new coat of paint.
In Mexico, everything always gets a new coat of paint, but everything is just so different. So you look at this penitentiary and you think, this is hell. I'm going to hell. This is literally hell. And you're always reminding yourself of other things that people went through, like Job, what he went through. I'm going through nothing compared to what Job went through in the book of Job, or what the Apostle Paul went through. This is nothing. It's just really nothing. You got to try to put stuff in perspective. It's just, I've always had a credo, and it was a Chris Christopherson movie where he said, I saw it in the 70s. He said, if you can't get out of it, get into it. And that has always served me very well. If you can't get out of something, you got to make the best of it. That's the only way to cope. It's the only way to survive. And that was what kept me alive, like even in the solitary, I call it. I'm cleaning the cell. I'm trying to just make the best of it. Look for the humor in it. Kevin, I will tell you, most of the time over the past 2 weeks, I thought about what I would say today. Mm-hmm. That occupied my mind a lot, how I would tell this story.
Is it something that you would possibly write down?
To a friend?
No.
You're not planning your next trip.
I was just going to say that's interesting. With all of this, there are three things that I'm kind of interested to know. Number one, would you go back? Number two, can you go back? And number three, have you had the opportunity to sit down with the family yet and really process all of this? And or is there a plan to sit down with someone professionally, maybe, just to sit down and see how everybody reacted and see how everybody's reacting? Now, obviously, there is that relief, but with all of this, there was a lot of undue stress, and how has it affected people? We're kind of hearing how it's affected you. How has it affected your wife? How has it affected your son? And, is that something, kind of like what they do as far as like a debrief, you know what I mean? When people come home from the military, before they let them go, they sit down and, kind of figure out where they're at with things. And is that something you considered at all? And I guess maybe a fourth question to this, your faith, has it put you in a place where you've kind of reaffirmed your faith and said, maybe I kind of took a few things for granted along the way. My situation, I certainly did, and it's reaffirmed my faith. And I look at this and I see, I've known you for a whole lot of years, and we've had a lot of fun and we've joked around a lot, but this is absolutely nothing at all to joke about, because you've lived it and you know what it's like, and you can express a sense that most Americans don't get, because just like you, all they want to do is go down and vacation, have a good time, maybe have a few drinks, party it up, and come home. So there's a lot of different things in your mind.
So would I go back? I can't foresee me going back.
Yeah.
Jack, do you want to go back to Mexico?
No, Mexico sucks.
Mexico sucks, was Jack's reply. I didn't hear that.
Jack's not been in school for 3 weeks. Vicky hasn't been to work in 3 weeks because of this.
Yeah.
I'm 2 weeks behind in my business. Mm-hmm. I have a lot to do, which is why I wanted to tell this story first before I really got up to my ears in it, because I know a lot of people are going to have questions. It's going to take a lot of time there's just so much to say. Mm-hmm. I mean, Bernsey, literally we could sit here till it gets dark.
Right.
No question.
Mm-hmm.
Can I go back? I think so. Mm-hmm. It's not relevant.
Yeah.
Not for the next 3.8 years anyway, for starters. As far as debriefing, obviously Vicky and Jack and I have been talking a lot, on the airplane, in the hotel room. Vicky got a text message this morning from the consulate wanting to know if I wanted to fill out like a mistreatment form. And speaking of the people who have reached out, I could spend the next 10 minutes just talking about the people who have reached out to Vicky, because every time I talk to Vicky, she's just like, John, you have no idea how much support you have at home.
Yes, sir.
You just can't imagine. She says, I'm hearing from everybody. I have Blaine Luchtemeyer's admin's cell phone number. She said, if necessary, she can get us a temporary passport. I've heard my mom, I bumped into her last night, stopped at her house, and of course she'd been squalling the whole time. She'd been talking to Jay Ashcroft this whole time, and Jay's like, we're trying everything we can. Who's the new senator? Schmidt. Vicky's heard from Schmidt's office. One of the congressmen, I think it's the 6th, I'm not sure. So many people. The money that was, Vicky couldn't wire the money because she's already in Mexico. She doesn't have access in Mexico to the funds here. So, my client at Topsider paid paid my attorney the $12,000 just instantly. The minute he heard he needed it was there. And Jack told me that, and I just burst into tears over it. I couldn't. Then my good friend Jacob Nushi over at Sullivan Bank, he's the one that paid the extortion money. The support was just unbelievable from so many people. I'm still going through my phone, all the people who've been telling me that they've been praying for me. And
we all were, but I think
it's relevant.
Yeah.
I don't think that, I believed in prayer anyway, but I know it works. Because when I stopped praying for myself and started praying for Vicky and Jack to get some peace, that I was going to be okay, the next day I told Vicky I prayed for that. She's like, oh, that makes such perfect sense because we slept so good last night, So there's a million stories of people who've been showing support, and that it's so humbling. It's so very humbling. I'm so grateful.
Well, we're just glad to have you home in one piece, buddy, because when you're in that situation, obviously you know absolutely nothing about what direction things are going to go, and you did the best thing that you could possibly do, and that's pray and have faith. And with that faith came a lot of answers, and with that faith came an opportunity to maybe find yourself a little bit, while at the same time getting through this as easily and as sanely as possible.
There's really not a lot of time to talk about what happens when I go to the penitentiary. They take the handcuffs off and give it back to the National Guard. And now they introduce their own handcuffs, which are manacles on my ankles and handcuffs on my wrists and a chain connecting the two. And now I'm marched through GP. You know what GP is, don't you, Dan?
General population. Right?
Of course, you guys know.
I do.
I've been marched through GP.
I've marched people through it.
Yeah.
So
I snore all on the same page.
Imagine 5,000 eyeballs on the gringo with the big white sneakers.
Right.
With no lashes, no shoelaces. Gringo. And they take me into a punishment cell, which is, I'm locked up in a cage where everybody else is running around, but I'm in a cage with three other guys. Yeah. And I don't have a pad anymore. We just have about 14 feet of concrete ledge hanging off the wall, and that's it. I went to sleep in that, and my pillow was a Coke bottle. You know how a big 2-liter Coke bottle has like a contour?
Sure.
I was glad to have it. I did not have my book. They had taken it when I arrived at the courthouse. Yes, sir.
Do me a favor.
Yes, sir.
Unfortunately, we're up against the clock, so come back and we'll talk about the experience in prison. I can see that you've obviously been very affected by all of this. You're very emotional by it, the support here, the support there, and would you come back and talk some more about it?
I'm always willing to come in here, Kevin, when time permits, but I will tell you that Jim Paisley and I are having drinks with Ike Skelton and Nate Rennie and James Gohagan. I'd like for you guys to be there.
Okay.
Tuesday, I got an invite from Merle.
All right.
At the Encore, and he said, hey, I'd love to have a welcome home party.